Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Schaeffer. I'm a therapist at Full Circle. And in this conversation about grief, I'm going to be talking a little bit about grief anxiety, talking through some of the facets of grief anxiety, and also talking about some strategies. Um, this material today that I'm presenting, I'm largely pulling from Claire Bidwell Smith's book, Anxiety, the Missing Stage of Grief. So I'm going to be highlighting some of the main points of this book, but I highly recommend reading it yourself. She has a very accessible writing style and uses a lot of different examples from her work with clients around grief anxiety. And if you're a clinician, I really recommend the companion book, which is Anxious Grief, that has a lot of different exercises that you can use with your clients who are dealing with anxiety as part of their grief. Now, let's just talk for a second about what anxiety is. I think all of us, as part of the human experience, have experienced some form of anxiety on some level in our lifetime. But of course, anxiety is that sort of sense of dread or doom that we feel at times. Anxiety stems from our thoughts, from fearful thoughts, rather than existing events. It's our thoughts that cause the feeling of anxiety. These thoughts might be real or imagined. They may be based on something that we witnessed in real time or something that we heard about, or they may be something that we imagined, something that is not happening or has never happened or will never happen. But we know that anxiety is very closely linked to our physiology. A physical sensation, like our heart racing, can cause anxious feelings, or anxious feelings can cause a physical sensation. And when anxiety is at its most intense, we can experience panic or panic attacks. How are grief and anxiety intertwined? Well, when you grieve, we know that many people experience the intensity of emotion in a way that they've never experienced in their lifetime. Feelings of anger, feelings of sadness, loneliness, isolation leave people feeling very overwhelmed. And this intensity of emotion can amplify the fears that you may already have, or the sense of vulnerability that kind of lies with all of us, within all of us. That sense can be heightened when we are grieving. Um, when we have sort of anxious thoughts that dominate our day, when we experience a panic attack, it's a really scary event. And so sometimes anxiety can lead to more anxiety because people begin to worry. My anxiety is going to get worse. I'm going to have another panic attack. And so it's sort of a vicious cycle. And sometimes we know that anxiety can have kind of an addictive quality. We begin to tell ourselves, well, if I'm worried about something happening, the more I think about it, the more I worry about it, then that will prevent it from happening. It's kind of a magical thinking pattern that, even though it's very normal and very common, we know is not true. Um, when these thoughts are in our heads, we often feel some sense of shame or embarrassment. We often feel like we're, going crazy. And so there's this urge to push feelings of anxiety down, to ignore them, to tell ourselves, I just have to keep going and they'll eventually go away. And we know that really the reality is that pushing those thoughts away, kind of trying to bury them, will only create more anxiety. And when we lose someone, our sort of existential beliefs, our feelings about life's uncertainty are kind of highlighted, and life feels a little bit untethered and uncertain, especially when we experience a sudden death or an out of order death. Some of the symptoms of anxiety that we see most often are, again, that sense of doom or dread, or feeling that you're on edge. Muscle tension is very common. Irritability is very common. Feeling nervous, having an upset stomach or a stomach that feels like it's in knots. Um, Sometimes having nausea and diarrhea are the result of anxiety. Certainly sleep problems, fatigue, headaches, and just feeling like you can't focus or make decisions. Um, So the first thing that Bidwell Smith discusses when she's talking about dealing with anxiety and kind of taking anxiety head on is really starting to examine and understand your story of loss. She writes, the essential truth is that even if you are not sharing your story, you are still carrying it around inside of you. It's vital to find ways to let it out, to look at it in the bright light of day, and to share it helps it breathe a little, and it helps us breathe too. So, how can we go about sharing our stories? Well, it starts by finding a safe place in which we can explore and share our story. And doing that helps us to begin to restore a little order. So, our story of loss can really live in our mind in pieces, it's in a chaotic form. By sharing it, though, we begin to take some control over it because we give it a little bit of structure. And it starts to allow the griever sharing the story, it starts to allow them to make a little bit more sense out of what can be a very senseless experience. So, what are some good ways to share your story and where? First of all, joining a support group, talking to trusted friends or family members, going to therapy, creating art, and writing. So I'll start with support groups. We know that being part of a support group can decrease those feelings of isolation that so many grievers feel. Sometimes deaths are stigmatized. Sometimes there's feelings of shame and embarrassment around death. And sometimes you just don't know anyone in your life who's really experienced what you've experienced. And so you can feel very isolated by those things. And feeling alone, feeling isolated is a scary place. So, again, being a part of a group helps you to not feel so isolated. In a support group, you begin to identify your feelings. Grief takes on many different it looks different on everyone, and there's lots of emotions that are associated, and you can kind of start to sort some of those out and identify what it is you're feeling as you talk within a support group. Your reactions and your experience that might feel crazy, might feel unique, might feel scary, all of that starts to be normalized when you hear other people sharing similar experiences or talking about similar reactions they maybe had or similar interactions that they had with other people. So you really start to gain a sense of normalcy by attending a support group. Again, being in a group can reduce your sense of shame and guilt. And just hearing other people's stories can be healing. We don't expect you to leave from a support group feeling like you're 100% better, but we know that healing happens in very small increments during a support group. You can also talk to friends and family members about your story. This is something that you can do on a walk outside or over coffee in a quiet place. I always recommend, looking at the friends or the family members that have consistently shown up for you, that do the things that they say that they're going to do, that really inspire trust in you. And let them know when you want to talk about your story of loss. Let them know that you're really just looking for somebody to listen to you. That you're not looking for advice and you're not looking for judgment, just a really good listener. You can also share your story in therapy with your therapist. With working with a therapist allows you to really look much more deeply at your story. You can really look at your relationship with your loved one, the ways that relationship was comforting and the ways that maybe it wasn't comforting to you. You can really start to look at the parts of your story that are maybe hardest to revisit. Maybe there's things that you don't want to talk about with the people in your daily life, your friends and your family. So a therapist can be a neutral person when you can share some of these things that are hard to talk about. And there might be parts of your story, or at least the way you tell yourself the story, your own narrative, that are maybe holding you back in your healing. Maybe there are things that you need some help reframing or looking at from a different perspective. And a therapist can really help you do that. Art is a great way to tell your story. If you're tired of talking or if you don't feel like you are ready to talk about your loss, using art, expressing yourself through, maybe single words or through imagery can be really therapeutic. And you do not have to come into this with any artistic skill. It's really the act of doing this that's what's important. And lastly, you can share your story through writing. Writing is a wonderful stress reliever. Just the way your body reacts to anxiety in a negative way through those, a headache or a stomach ache or a tightness in your chest. Um, Writing can help soothe your body. It can help you make you feel calm, make your breathing slow down. Um, and it also helps you stay connected to your loved one. It helps you keep those memories fresh. It helps you to think about what it was that you loved about them, and also maybe the things that you want to say to them. So to help get yourself started, if it feels daunting to you or like something that you've never done before, definitely recommend using some writing prompts. And if you're not into that, then literally just starting a daily practice, giving yourself, starting off by only giving yourself maybe 3 or 5 minutes and just writing whatever comes into your mind without worrying about, good grammar or good spelling or the context of what you're writing, just kind of getting some words out on the page and doing that every day, you'll start to really find it a therapeutic part of your day. And the different ways that you can write your story and art, through writing a letter to your loved one. Again, maybe there are things that you didn't get to say, or things that you think of, in your daily life that you want to tell them. Writing a letter to yourself, letting yourself know that you're going to be okay, giving yourself a pat on the back for the things that you're doing to survive each day. Again, just keeping a daily journal of your interactions, of the things that you feel good about, of the things that people say that might annoy you or bother you. Just a daily journal is a great way to write, and then writing about your memories. Keeping those stories alive and fresh in your head so that you can reread them and think of your person in a comforting way. Just a few writing prompts that can get you started. Things like, today I'm having a hard time with. One thing I want to remember about them is, where do you feel grief in your body? Kind of helps you to give some thought to, where where do I feel that grief? Do I have stomach aches? Do I have ringing in my ears? Are my shoulders tense? What is something that makes you feel supported? How did your loved one make you feel? And then writing directly to your loved one. You taught me. I remember when. You were so happy when. Bidwell Smith has lots of writing prompts in her book, and there are even tons more just on the internet. So if you are wanting to get started writing and you're looking for a prompt, they are easy to find. The next thing that Bidwell Smith talks about being really important as you are learning to cope with anxiety and grief is starting to address some of the guilt and the regret that you feel in your grief. He writes, when we experience guilt within grief, we feel forced to carry the burden of our wrongdoings with us rather than being able to apologize and make things right with that person, feeling that we are no longer able to do so. However, holding on to guilt is counterproductive to our healing process and serves to cause undue moments of anguish and anxiety. Again, guilt and regret are human emotions that are common to just about all of us. Some people feel them more strongly, though, in grief. It's really important to begin to talk about them, to begin to examine why it is you feel regret, why you feel guilt. Maybe it's that you didn't get to say goodbye to someone. Maybe it's that you had a falling out, and there are things that you had already always planned to say in reconciliation, but never got a chance to. Um, by looking at some of these things and really examining them, you can kind of separate out, maybe there's things that just are, that couldn't be helped. And maybe there's things that you can work on in terms of making amends. Um, so, really, and I definitely recommend working, with a counselor, with a therapist around this. This is hard work. But, giving yourself grace, giving yourself some forgiveness is also really important. And again, pulling in, writing, using self-talk, visualizing your loved one and saying the things to them that you didn't get to say are all ways that you can start to unburden yourself with what's weighing on you. And lastly, I just want to say that, these are, again, things that people tend to bury. They don't want to bring up. They are ashamed, but they really need to be out in the light of day. And you will start to feel better by unburdening yourself, by letting someone else in to examine these things with you. Um, Next, she talks about strengthening your reserves, kind of making yourself as strong as you possibly can to get through this grieving season of life, to build up strength to take on this anxiety that you're feeling. Bidwell Smith writes, resilient grieving is about being proactive in your grief process. It's about letting yourself cry and mourn, but also taking a look at your coping methods and earnestly beginning to reshape your life. It's about not letting your world fall irrevocably apart as a result of this loss. So the things that she talks about are, number one, establishing routine in your life. This is really important when you're grieving, when you have anxiety that's becoming a problem for you. Having a routine in your day can really give you a sense of order. It can help to soothe your anxious brain. It can make you feel a sense of safety. It can make you feel more secure in life, just to add some structure to your life. It can help make you feel more grounded. When we don't have routine, our life can feel very unsettled, very chaotic, and of course those feelings automatically lead to anxiety. Next, she talks about looking at the things in your life that are helpful and the things that are harmful. So again, grief looks differently for everyone, and there's all kinds of things that are very normal in grief. But sometimes behaviors and thoughts after time, if they're the only thing in your life, if they begin to dominate, if thoughts about guilt, if reliving your person's death start to dominate your thought process and keep you from thinking about other things, keeping you from focusing on your family, on your job, on other things that you have to do in your life, then it's time to look at, okay, well, what are the things that I need to let go of, and how can I go through that? Working with a counselor is definitely helpful in trying to let go of what's harmful. And then the next thing she talks about is, of course, taking good care of your body. These are things that we all know and hear all the time, whether we're grieving or not. But as a griever, exercise is really important. It doesn't have to feel punishing. It shouldn't feel like something that you have to do against your will. It should feel good. It should feel invigorating. Being outside or being around people where you're just taking a walk, exercising in a pool, do something to get your body moving, even if it's just for a few minutes every day. Eating, making sure we don't always have good appetite when we're grieving, but getting enough food in us, nurturing our bodies, provides us the reserves we need to then deal with things like anxiety that are trying to slow us down. And then getting good rest is another really important factor. Grounding yourself. So meditation and mindfulness are very, very well-known ways to start to put to rest some of the anxiety that you feel. Um, they help you to be more present in your life. They help you to focus less on the past, worry less about the future. And just our lives are busy, whether even when we're grieving, our tasks at home, our tasks at work fill our minds, and our minds can be very noisy with competing thoughts. So, practicing mindfulness, even if it's just for a few minutes of a day, can really help to quiet that noisiness. They give us a period of peace in our day, and you can start to look forward to it if you make a practice of it and try to be really consistent. Um, and they're great strategies for stopping spiraling thoughts. So, when you're at work, when you don't have the time to sit and really, examine your thoughts, um, piece them apart, um, having some good grounding techniques, like some breathing techniques, getting up, going out, sitting outside, using some good breathing, having a 4-second inhale and a 6-second exhale, paying attention to your senses, listen to the things that you're hearing, think about what you're seeing with your eyes, think about what you're feeling, really taking your mind away from those thoughts that are swirling and just being in the present can really help to, you know, both stop those thoughts and also help with those physical symptoms like a racing heart and shortness of breath. Um, Developing rituals is really important, and this does not require religious faith. These rituals are things that you do for yourself in your daily life to help you stay connected to your loved one. So you really are considering the way that the things that your person loved, the things that you did together. If you loved going to movies together, then continue going to see movies. If there was a certain meal that they loved or a cup of coffee, a coffee mug that they use that coffee mug, make that meal in honor of them. These types of rituals can really help you develop some meaning, not meaning of their, behind their death, but the meaning in their life. If they had a cause that was really important to them, that might be something that you start to learn more about or get involved with. Feeling a stronger connection to your loved one can help with that anxiety that we feel about them slipping away, that their memory will start to fade. If we work to deepen that connection, then that anxiety will subside. And then the last thing that I wanted to highlight from Bidwell Smith's book is her sort of encouragement to start to look ahead. And this isn't something that you do early on in grief, but there comes a point when you will start to, look at your life and think about, well, what comes next for me. Bidwell Smith writes, finding a balance between embracing life to its fullest potential and also being responsible and planning for the future is an important part of this journey. Don't be surprised if you have found yourself in this predicament, suddenly wanting to make major changes to your life because now you realize what's truly important to you. So again, this might not be something that you might not be in this place yet, but when you come to this place, when you start to feel some overwhelm about your future and about how to make your future rich in honor of your loved one, here are some questions from her book that are helpful to you to consider. And again, working with a family member on these things or writing them down and then talking to a therapist about them would be a great way to sort of give some structure to some of these questions and really make a plan for yourself. So looking at what are the things in your life that you'd like to change? Are there bad habits you'd like to quit? Are there relationships that need work? Are there amends that you need to make with someone? What would you do if you weren't afraid? Do you have any major life goals? Are you making a meaningful contribution to your community? Again, I think this is a nice way to kind of end her book because I think it really ends on a really hopeful note that, one way you can honor someone who has died is by living your life in the way that feels most authentic and most full to you. And in doing that, you can really start to tackle the anxiety that's left behind after a loved one dies. So this is the conclusion of my conversation about grief on anxiety in grief. And I just want to thank you for watching. Please check out our website for more conversations about grief and more resources, and certainly reach out if there's something that I can help you with. Thanks so much.